Alrighty, class. So here is your lecture. I will talk about Codepen and also talking about getting some code running in a purely text-based environment. There are some subtleties, some pretty frustrating things at first as you're learning about it. But I feel like a lot of us are ready now. And so 1.5 weeks in, you've got a sense of like how the blocks works, how the codes work, and now I'm trying to ease that transition to okay, now you type instead of drag and drop. So you should have made a codepen.io account. This is the tool we'll be using, although all the assignments that I will be assigning you are doable in Game Lab. So don't feel that you need to use CodePen. It just offers more capabilities for you, like curve functions and more specific colors and um, eventually sound if I can get it to work. So there's a lot more out there. CodePen's limited. You can see that they hide some details so that as you're beginning, it's a great place to start, but I'm trying to move you towards this. Try to use your student email, fill it out. Here's my slide, and there is one part I want to emphasize is notice this one. You may get something that has some HTML code and some CSS code. That's for web pages. Our focus is not going to be on these two, although you're welcome to experiment with that on your free time, especially if you completed the assignments. Our focus will be on this JS side, the JavaScript side. Any code you'll write in CodePen lives in that window. So as you maximize some space, maybe you just want to double click and close these windows, move them over, you just type code in JS. That stands for JavaScript. One of the most important steps when moving to CodePen, right, like most of your issues when I walk by and it's like, hey, why is my program not running? It will be this step right here. CodePen is like a development environment that's web-based, but it has lots of different flavors of JavaScript. In this class, we're using a particular flavor, and that's called p5.js. p5.js is what GameLab uses, and it stands for processing with like HTML5. So Mr. Simon's class that teaches processing in Java, that's what came first, processing in Java. And now P5, because of the popularity of this visual graphics-based and sound to language, they made a JavaScript variety so it runs in our browser, no need to compile or do anything special, which is great because we have Chromebooks for you to use, so I can't download and save things anyways. So that's why we're using that language. And later, if you choose to go on to principles or computer science, know that you have some familiarity, you know the language, kind of. Right, Tarsa? Yeah.
True.
Yeah, so he was in my class last semester. You're in Mr. Simon's class now, and so far so good, right? Cool. And so when you click on this JavaScript tab, be sure to add in this p5.js library. You will have to search for it. Oftentimes, if you just type p5, it'll pop up. Make sure you click it. You'll know that it's there if you scroll, oops, my slides are static, so if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see p5.min.js, right? And some slashes and some other words. That's how you know you've added it. And now when you type in code, specifically this p5.js code, the computer will recognize it and you should be able to generate an image. Very basically. Is that redundant? Okay, so one of the first things we did was draw a circle to the screen. And that's what I want you all to do. Make sure you can see a circle on the screen. If you copy and paste this, I think you should be able to see a white background with a white circle with a black outline on the screen. Notice that as you're typing it, for those that are choosing not to like copy and paste, it's really good for you because there are details that really matter. For example, capitalization, spacing, these little squiggly brackets which are located above the square brackets near your enter key. All those details matter. Semicolons, they matter kind of too. Although you can leave them off, I find it best practice to leave them in. Spelling, along with capitalization, counts. So notice this is lowercase function, and if you type it incorrectly and P5 kind of recognizes it, it changes colors. Setup, that's important. Notice this would be the name of the block. This is new when we're moving to CodePen. Previously, we didn't have a setup function. We didn't have a setup block. We just had a draw block. Right? This was like the green block on the outside that you dragged ellipse shapes, colors into. Okay, so that's that same thing. Ellipse, make sure you spell it with 2 L's, then an I, P, S, and then 4 numbers. Okay, X coordinate, Y coordinate, width, and height. For the purpose of the screencast, I'm going to slowly move on, but you have access to my slides. You can look on over there. Okay, you should get a white circle. That's how you know you're in the right spot. Maybe if you haven't, you need to pay attention. Oh, are these lines of code on separate lines, just like with blocks being on separate lines? Notice that one follows after another, right? Each line of code should be on its individual line. That matters. Spacing between these words, because this is a keyword, between function and setup, function and draw, yeah, that matters. Open parentheses being here, yep, also matters. So those are just some typical issues. I'll troubleshoot your individual issues after I'm done here. Okay, so I'm moving on. Hope you see a circle. For some preferences, notice that this kind of view, it's like down here. I kind of like it having matching game lab. So I click up here and change view. You can have your output or your visuals on the left, your code on the right, if you want that. If you could switch it. But I find this one kind of annoying because your screens are kind of small, so you got to like scroll down often, right? 2-finger tap, whatever it is, scroll down. And when you have a bigger canvas, when you have a bigger background, it becomes annoying. So that's why I like to have it on the side, which is why I have preferences for this view. Heads up, I'm introducing Codepen because your third assignment is called Penguin, right? You can make this to start. You choose any animal you want. And I imagine you're going to get pretty complex animals, and you're going to want to use curves. You're going to want to try to experiment with rotations, all this stuff that you kind of asked me in Game Lab, and I told you, it's kind of hard. And so you have to do the coordinate geometry. Codepen has the tools to make it easier, but it will be on you to kind of understand it, and I'll be there to give you nudges and hints and things. That's why we're transitioning to Codepen. But by all means, if you've already made an animal in Game Lab, you can turn that in. That's very much acceptable. So building on that code from earlier, this is exactly the same, but then I added in some comments, right? That was the gray block in Game Lab. You remember that comments, they aren't read by the computer. The computer just sees it and ignores it. These comments are really for you and the user. So you press the slash 2 times and notice that in Codepen it kind of grays it out, right? That means the computer ignores it. That's a comment. And notice down here, I wrote, most of your code's going to go into draw. Ellipse you recognize, but I'll take this time to emphasize these 2 new things and the setup function. So continuing with that artist or painting analogy, your canvas is your screen. And now you can determine how big you want your screen to be, right? Say you want like a giant easel of size 400 pixels by 400 pixels width and height. Then you declare it here. So right now I have 200 pixels by 200 pixels. That's smaller than the screen you're given in Game Lab. You could have 1,000 by 1,000, whatever numbers you want, all across the screen. The scroll bar is going to appear. You can move across that. You now have the capability of changing your canvas size. In Game Lab, that was fixed to 400 and 400. And you may need that because you want to scale things up, scale things down. You need to scroll for a game, whatever. By this point, I also hope you played around with the background block. You need one of those. 255 means it's the color white. All the pixels are shining at their brightest, so this means white. If you type background 0, that's shorthand to saying a black background. Notice the use of optional arguments here. And color works a bit different than compared to Game Lab, but I'll show you that soon. Notice that in setup, right, that code only runs once. Following with the painting and artist analogy, you just need to take like your canvas, set it out in front of you, and you don't change it out till you're done with your painting, whatever art creation you're making. The draw function is a very subtlety, is repeated over and over again. And we're going to make use of that later when we do animations. So far, over here, yes, there should be 2 ellipses shown. They're just right on top of one another. They're being repeated a bunch of times, so really, how many ellipses are shown? It's unknown because they're drawn over and over again. Okay, your documentation is a little different now. You have to go to p5.js/reference. No longer can you just hover over the mouse, like the block you want to use, because you got to type it out. This is like where you go when you're lost. Let's say I'm unsure how to use background. So Control find, I look that up, I click here, and then it shows you, this is what it means. Notice that if you give one number, it's variations on gray, white being like one end, black being the other, and all the things in between. And notice how they use color. One important thing to know when transitioning from Game Lab is that you don't need the RGB block anymore. You can just type in how intense do you want red, green, and blue to be. The same goes for fill. The same also goes for stroke. So if you want specific colors, type in 3 numbers that represents the intensity of the pixel for the corresponding red, green, and blue colors. Okay? I'm back here. Other things you should know. It's very similar to GameLab's documentation. First, it gives you a little paragraph, right? As I thought it did. Okay, so first it starts with examples. Then it has a little paragraph explaining in great detail what it does. And then down here it tells you what are its different forms. Are there things that are optional? Are there things that are required? Just like before, okay? And that's the documentation in a nutshell, in summary. So as you explore, now you have more functions. The last two are of particular interest because begin shape and end shape are what p5.js and Codepen call shape in Codepen, right? Or no, in GameLab. GameLab, you had like a long bunch of numbers, and it was just in one block, right? And you use shape. Now you have to like divide it up, save on, like you need the coordinates still, but each of those coordinates is going to live on its own line. And I recommend you go pull up the documentation and see an example of that. Okay? The last part, I'm going to walk through how I would translate over my, Eye of Sauron code, yes, this thing, and get it working in GameLab, like from scratch. So just a hands-on demo. So although it's zoomed in, when I go to Codepen, it looks like this. I click here, and each time I make a new project, funny. The interface looks a little different since I used it in the beginning of summer. So, of course, I like this way. I'm going to drag this up, right, because all my code lives here. First thing I do, add in p5.js. I'm going a little fast, but it is being recorded, so you can look at this on your own time. Nice. So then I type in function. Oh, good, my text is still big. Oh, look, keyword. Function setup, squiggly bracket, function draw. I'll demonstrate right now. Technically, you don't need create canvas, but you'll see something funny happen, right? All right, first thing, do I get a circle? I do. So notice for mine, although it's like kind of zoomed in, right now you have the option where it auto runs for you. I'll show you later. I have like a reset and run button. I like that because sometimes I want to be sure about the change. I'll tell you about that later in the week, perhaps next week. Okay, I got a circle, nice. So I'm going to borrow my Codepen code. I'm going to click on show text, and anything inside draw is what I'm going to copy. All right, so Command C, I don't know what it is on Chromebooks. I'm going to paste it in here. Let's see if it'll work. Yeah. Okay, so it's complaining. At this point, since it's going to be like Codepen, I'm going to set my canvas to be exactly the same. Create canvas. Notice the second C is capital. I'm going to have 400 pixels by 400 pixels. And let's be sure I'm going to have a white background. And I'll spell it out this time. Okay, save and run. Blast. Doesn't work. Oh, black background. Right, all lights are off. I want it white. 255, 255. Nice. All right, run. All right, cool. I know some code is running. So this is supposed to be my blue ring. Stroke weight still works the same. Ellipse still works the same. No fill, that's the same. Stroke. So that controls color. We no longer need RG and B. We just need the pixel intensities. Ellipse, that's good. Stroke weight, that's good. Text size, text, stroke. So I'm going to comment these out for now. This is a great way to temporarily remove your code and then add it back in when you know it's working. Oh, it was hiding this whole time. Wow, look at that. So it is here, right? And there's my eye. Let's see if the text will show up too. Let's see. Text size, is that going to run? It may be called different things. Nope. Let's see. What if I just have default text like this? All right, so it looks like I can't get, oh yeah, you see the ISL wrong right there, right? It popped up. And so, good. And it is in fact red, nice. Something's off though. Red. So one of these rings should have been blue, right? Well, I guess because right. Well, let's make it blue. Fill, R. R is nothing, blue is everything, and then like that. Okay, so now I reset. One of those things are turned blue. Green, RG. B. B is the third one. Blast. Okay, so and then let's fix text size. So I'll demonstrate how I would use the documentation. Click on reference, control find text, right? These are all the text related functions. It looks like text size is spelled the same. Huh. I don't know why it isn't working. Text size right here. Oh, maybe it was too big. Let's try half as big, 4. Yeah, looks fine now. Okay, so there was a short example of me translating my Codepen code into starting with my game lab code, moving it to Codepen. And that's all I have to say for today. Thanks for listening. Display. Put this soon.